March 20th, 2020, the world is gripped by a global pandemic, and Canadians are huddled in their homes, anxious about the future. As the economy takes a nosedive, the cost of living in Canada is set on an unstoppable trajectory upward. Fast forward to today, and for many, the dream of a comfortable life in Canada has become a distant memory. What happened? Why has Canada become so unaffordable? This is the dark reality we're living in. The cost of housing in Canada has skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. Once upon a time, buying a home was a realistic goal for the average Canadian family. But today, it's nearly impossible. In cities like Toronto and Vancouver, the average home price exceeds $1 million. To afford such a home, a family needs an income that's far beyond the reach of most Canadians. Even in smaller cities, prices are spiraling out of control, leaving families with few options. Renting isn't much better. Vacancy rates are at historic lows, and rents are climbing faster than incomes can keep up. For many, it's a choice between paying rent or putting food on the table, but not both. And speaking of food, let's talk about the cost of groceries. Since 2020, food prices have risen by over 10%, hitting Canadians where it hurts most, their wallets. Visiting a food bank is no longer an emergency solution. It's become a regular necessity for millions. The lack of competition in the food industry has only made things worse. A handful of companies control most of the market, driving up prices with little government intervention to stop them. Even basic necessities like bread have become luxury items for some. But it's not just housing and food. The cost of energy has become another burden for Canadians to bear. The government's carbon tax, meant to reduce emissions, has made gas and heating more expensive than ever before. Add to that the rising cost of telecommunications, with Canadians paying some of the highest cell phone and internet bills in the world, and it's clear the cost of living in Canada is out of control. So, how did we get here? The government's policies have played a significant role in this crisis. From record levels of immigration without corresponding increases in housing, to ineffective regulation of monopolies and a failure to encourage private sector investment, the Canadian government has contributed to making life in Canada unaffordable for many. Businesses are taking their investments elsewhere, and top talent is leaving the country in droves. The Canadian dream, once the promise of a better life, is slipping away. This is the harsh reality of living in Canada today. As we look to the future, one thing is clear: something has to change. But until it does, millions of Canadians will continue to struggle to make ends meet in a country they can no longer afford to call home. But the problems don't stop there. Let's talk about the job market. While Canada used to be a land of opportunity, recent years have seen a dramatic shift. The promise of stable, well-paying jobs has dwindled, particularly for young Canadians. University graduates are entering a job market saturated with underemployment and low wages, often unrelated to their field of study. The dream of a prosperous career has turned into a harsh reality of juggling multiple jobs just to scrape by. Consider this: in 2023, nearly half of young Canadians between the ages of 18 and 34 reported living with their parents, not by choice, but out of necessity. High housing costs combined with stagnant wages and a lack of job opportunities have made it nearly impossible for many to gain financial independence. The traditional milestones of adulthood, buying a home, starting a family, building a career, are now out of reach for an entire generation. And it's not just young people. Middle-aged Canadians who were once secure in their careers are finding themselves laid off and unable to find comparable work, pushing them into lower-paying, unstable jobs. This leads us to another critical issue: Canada's social safety net, which, for many, has become a thin, fraying lifeline. The employment insurance system, designed to support those who lose their jobs, is outdated and inadequate. In many cases, it doesn't cover the realities of today's gig economy, where contract work and freelance jobs dominate. This means that when Canadians lose their jobs, they often don't qualify for EI benefits, leaving them without a safety net when they need it most. Healthcare, once a point of national pride, is also under immense strain. Long wait times, a shortage of healthcare professionals, and underfunded facilities have left many Canadians without timely access to the care they need. Mental health services are particularly lacking, And as more Canadians struggle with the stress of making ends meet, the demand for these services has never been higher. Yet, the system is not equipped to handle this growing crisis, leaving many without the support they desperately need. Let's not forget the impact on Canada's small businesses, the backbone of the economy. Rising costs, coupled with increasing taxes and a lack of government support, have made it incredibly difficult for small businesses to survive, let alone thrive. Many have been forced to close their doors, leaving behind empty storefronts and shattered dreams. This isn't just about numbers. It's about communities losing their character and vitality as local businesses disappear, replaced by big corporations that care little for the people they serve. And then there's the environmental cost. Canada's natural beauty, from its vast forests to its pristine lakes, is facing unprecedented threats. The government's commitment to fighting climate change has been inconsistent at best. While the carbon tax was introduced with the right intentions, it has not been enough to offset the environmental damage caused by decades of industrial exploitation. Meanwhile, Indigenous communities, who have long been stewards of the land, continue to face environmental injustices, with their lands and waters being polluted by extractive industries. So where does this leave us? The reality is that the cost of living crisis in Canada is not just an economic issue, it's a social one. It's eroding the very fabric of Canadian society, creating deep divides between those who have and those who have not. The middle class, once the cornerstone of the Canadian economy, is being squeezed out, leaving behind a stark divide between the wealthy and the poor. This is not the Canada we grew up believing in, where hard work was supposed to lead to success and security. Let's look into another aspect of this crisis: Canada's soaring debt levels. As Canadians struggle to keep up with the cost of living, many have turned to credit to fill the gaps. This has led to an alarming rise in household debt, which now sits among the highest in the world. According to the Bank of Canada, the average Canadian owes $1.70 for every dollar they earn. This debt burden isn't just a number on a page. It's a daily reality for millions who are juggling credit card payments, mortgages, car loans, and student debt, all while trying to afford basic necessities. Take Sarah, for example, a single mother in Toronto who works 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Every month, she faces the impossible task of deciding which bills to pay and which to push off. Sarah is one of many Canadians who have been forced into a cycle of debt just to survive, and she's not alone. Across the country, the reliance on credit is growing, leading to a situation where many are just one unexpected expense away from financial ruin. This financial fragility is compounded by the fact that wages have remained largely stagnant over the past decade. While the cost of everything from housing to groceries has shot up, wages have barely budged. In real terms, this means that Canadians are working harder for less. The dream of financial stability is slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of anxiety about the future. And let's not forget the impact on mental health. The constant stress of making ends meet is taking a toll on Canadians' well-being. Mental health crises are on the rise, with more and more people reporting feelings of anxiety, depression, and hopelessness. Yet, access to mental health services remains limited, particularly for those who need it most. The pandemic only exacerbated these issues, but the underlying problems have been building for years. Another critical point to consider is the effect of this crisis on Canada's elderly population. Many seniors who spent their lives working and saving now find themselves in a precarious situation. Fixed incomes, such as pensions and retirement savings, simply haven't kept pace with the rising cost of living. This has left many older Canadians struggling to afford essentials like housing, medication, and food. For a country that prides itself on taking care of its citizens, this is a heartbreaking reality. In addition, the challenges of accessing affordable health care are particularly acute for seniors. As they age, their health care needs increase, but the public health care system is under immense strain. Long wait times for surgeries and specialist appointments are common, and many are forced to seek private care or forego treatment altogether. This not only diminishes their quality of life, but also places a heavier burden on their families, who are often already struggling to make ends meet themselves. We also need to talk about the environment. particularly in the context of the northern and indigenous communities. Climate change is having a disproportionate impact on these regions, where the cost of living is already incredibly high. In Nunavut, for instance, food prices are staggering, with some basic items costing 3 times more than in the southern provinces. The combination of harsh environmental conditions and economic neglect has left these communities grappling with food insecurity, poor infrastructure, and a lack of economic opportunities. The lack of investment in sustainable development for these areas is not just an economic oversight, it's a moral failure. Canada's wealth is vast, but it is unevenly distributed, leaving some of its most vulnerable citizens to fend for themselves in conditions that are entirely preventable. And while we're on the topic of uneven wealth distribution, it's important to acknowledge the widening gap between the rich and the poor. The top 1% of Canadians have seen their wealth grow exponentially, even during times of economic downturn, while the majority of Canadians have experienced a decline in their financial well-being. This disparity is creating a society where opportunity is no longer based on merit or hard work, but on the wealth and connections you were born into. We're also seeing a brain drain, where some of Canada's brightest minds are leaving for opportunities abroad. Highly educated professionals, particularly in the tech and finance sectors, are moving to the US or other countries where their skills are better compensated and the cost of living is more reasonable. This exodus of talent is not just a loss for those individuals, it's a loss for the country as a whole. Canada's ability to innovate and compete on the global stage is being undermined by its failure to retain top talent. So what's the takeaway? The cost of living crisis in Canada is not just about numbers, it's about people. It's about the single mother drowning in debt, the young graduate who can't find a job, the senior choosing between medicine and food, and the Indigenous communities forgotten by policymakers. The Canadian dream, once a symbol of hope and opportunity, is slipping away, replaced by a harsh reality where survival takes precedence over thriving. As Canadians, we need to demand better. We need to hold our leaders accountable and push for policies that address the root causes of these issues. It's not enough to tinker around the edges. We need bold, transformative change that puts the well-being of all Canadians at the forefront. Because if we don't, the cost of living in Canada will continue to rise, and the dream of a better future will remain out of reach for far too many. Thank you for staying with us through this critical discussion. If you believe in the need for change, make sure to subscribe to Real Scope for more insightful analysis and join us in the conversation for a better Canada. The fight for a more affordable and equitable Canada starts with awareness, and together, we can make a difference.